All right, so we have today Adam Sear, the assistant coach at Michigan. He will be presenting Which Way Do I Go? Offensive spacing and the tools to teach it.
Thank you very much, Paige. First of all, thank you for coming. This is a pretty fun opportunity that I get to kind of stand up here and talk to my peers in regards to what we deal with on a daily basis. This topic has gone through building this presentation. There's probably too much in it. We might go over time, or you can come find me if you have any questions afterwards, those types of things. But I really kind of based this topic or talk or presentation, whatever you want to call it, on my last 2 years of experience at the University of Michigan. But firstly, I'm new to this. I've only been coaching the women's game for about 2 years, so I kind of thought, well, some people might be sitting here going, who is this guy? Yeah, he coaches at the University of Michigan, but what is essentially his background? As you can probably tell, I'm not from here. From Perth, Australia originally. I was grew up, born and raised, till I was about 19 years old, moved over here to play collegiately at the University of Maryland. Was lucky enough to get an opportunity thanks to a guy named Bob Schreiber, who's pretty well known in the lacrosse world, especially around Baltimore. And then obviously the head coach at the time, Dave Cottle, gave me the opportunity or kind of took a chance on a kid from halfway around the world and allowed him to, kind of achieve a dream. That was a long time ago. It's now almost 2020, of course. And, since then have had a couple different stops. Right out of college, I got into coaching at the Division III men's level. Again, was lucky enough to be given an opportunity by a guy named Mark Fry, a guy from Northern Virginia. Moved down to a town called Ferrum, about 45 minutes south of Roanoke in Southern Virginia. Take an Aussie kid, put him in Maryland. He's going to do okay with the snow. A different point of view. You take an Aussie kid, put him in Southern Virginia. Now that's a different situation. But look, it was a great experience. And then I was lucky enough again to work for Paul Cantabine at Stevenson University as a graduate assistant. Went back to school. I then, kind of struggled with what I really wanted to do. I didn't want to move to a rural area. I had kind of talked to myself about that. And so, lucky enough, got an opportunity with a club program and moved to California to find myself, let's say that. But I was out in California for about 3.5 years. And then one day got a phone call. Got a phone call from one of my best friends. You guys probably know her. Her name is Hannah Nielsen. I've known Han for a really long time. And that phone call was essentially, hey, I'm interviewing for the Michigan job. Awesome, great. That sounds, incredible if you get it. 2 or 3 days later, she gives me a call back. Hey, I interviewed for the head coaching position. I think it went really, really well. I'm like, yeah, cool. Let me know how it goes. A couple days after that, calls me back. Shit, I think I'm about to get that job. And I'm like, wow, and that's unbelievable. We're talking, excuse my language, but we were talking and we kind of joking around. I told her, like, yeah, I'd work for you. That'd be pretty fun. She goes, yeah, I'd hire. And then about 2 days after that, she calls me back and goes, were you being serious? And I said, were you being serious? Within 2 weeks, I was living in Michigan. Packed up shop, put everything in my car, put that in a truck, sent it to Michigan. I flew home to get my visa done. And here I am kind of 2.5 years later doing something that I don't think, it's probably the best thing I could possibly do. I'm having too much fun doing this, which is why, I wanted to share a little bit of my story and then obviously this topic with you guys. So why did I choose this topic? This is obviously what I deal with on a daily basis. I work on the offensive side of the ball, obviously under the direction of Han. This experience for me has been all three of those words: special, frustrating, challenging, whatever you could put on it. It's probably been. As a new coach to the women's game, there was also that learning period for me, but then I'm also expected to kind of teach this new group of players who've got a brand new coaching staff and are talking a little bit funny, a whole new offensive system and trying to establish what we were trying to go through. And this, for us, has been such an amalgamation of an evolving topic through our entire process here or time at the University of Michigan. So I'll kind of concentrate. Obviously, there's a lot of different parts of the offensive side of the ball. I'll be concentrating more on the settled 7v7 situation. And I'll break that down part by part and kind of allowing you to see how we approached and how we still approach kind of installing new offenses, whether it's IQ, those types of things. And like it says right there, helpful tips, concepts along the way. I got a couple one-liners. I kind of call them my isms that'll pop up. And just all these tools and approaches that we've used at the University of Michigan over the last kind of 2.5 years. First things first. This is actually a pretty fun text I got this summer from a graduated senior who was in New York working in a financial company. She sent this to me, and I felt the need to share it with everybody and kind of put it in the talk as well. But the first thing is KYP. I say KYP a lot. What does KYP mean? Obviously, it says it right there, know your personnel. And what I mean by that is that not all players are alike. That's certainly well known. But then not all players fit into what you believe is the right system to play offense. I may think the way I do things is the best thing possible, the most advantageous way to play offense. However, I might have a group of players that don't fit that skill set. For example, a two-man game versus a 1v1 drive, versus a feeding game, versus a zone defense, versus a man defense, all those types of things, I personally believe you have to take into account. And what it says right there, I don't think you can get any more true than that. You can't fit, a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't work. So you have to know your personnel, and you have to cater to those individuals. So as you build and adjust and push forward, although skill development is obviously such a massive part of what we do, whether it's individually or from a group perspective, our number one thing that we really, really had to do was build IQ. And it was based off what we had. Kind of that's what I call that student-athlete profile at the University of Michigan. And I really kind of broke it down, or three. There's certainly other things that we had in there. But when we got there, Hannah and I really sat down, obviously with Anna as well, and talked about what are we good at? What is this group good at? And what we basically came up with, we had athletes. We had big, strong kids, all right? And it's a good thing to have. We had raw physical straight liners. What I mean by that is that these kids did not shy away from contact. They like driving in straight lines because, again, what are they good at? They're fast, they're quick. All right, so for me, I wanted to really harness that and push that into the way we play offense, and I've got some film to kind of back all this up that you really, really, I think, get a sense of how we kind of approached it and what we made priorities along the way. And then lastly, raw. The playing group that we inherited on a large part outside kind of 3 or 4 individuals, had seen limited minutes. So from a game experience standpoint, they really, really hadn't had that experience to go, okay, what am I good at? How do I do this? And obviously the new situation with the coaching staff just pile that on top, of course, to make it, an extra special situation, let's say that. We'll start kind of with, 3 things that we perceive at the University of Michigan to be must-haves. This is what, for us, has been kind of the cornerstone of what we do, along with a few other concepts. But consistent language. Consistent language kind of breaks down to a little bit of my business background. When I was in LA, I was out of the lacrosse word for a little while and got to really kind of deal with some marketing and some cool people out there. And basically what I learned is that consistent language is the first and basically only way to avoid some type of confusion when talking verbally to either a player, a customer, or whatever it may be. We then established do's and don'ts. What can I do, or what's the higher percentage play in each area of the field? And I'll kind of break that down as we push along here. When I receive the ball, what's my percentage look here, whether I'm on the 45 wing at X or top or crease, whatever it is that we name on the field. And then that leads into exactly what I just kind of mentioned, which is the reference points. Allowing a player to be able to talk to them and say, I want you to stand on the wing versus the 45. Although some people necessarily think that might be the same area, for us, it's different. The reason why that's different, and we'll kind of allude to, is that defenses approach you a different way in each one of these positions on the field. Whether it's a zone, whether it's a man, all those types of things. And again, I'll kind of expand on that as well. As we push through here, this is just an example of basically, I think it's about a 6 or 7 page document that we have that we give our players on a yearly basis. So this is our terminology sheet. A lot of these terms, this is simply just an example for you guys, but this is kind of the detail that we want to break down. From outlet. What is an outlet? Okay, again, being consistent through our language, and that's the entire staff. It can't be offensive and a defensive coach talking different positions on the field, because at times an offensive player may find the defensive coach and talk to them. So for me, learning the defense that we're running at the University of Michigan with Anna and obviously Hannah as well, we want to make sure that we're all saying the exact same thing. And if we're not, if I'm saying different things compared to Hannah, to myself, that just leads to confusion. And then you times that by 35 or 36 kids that we have there at the University of Michigan, it's going to make things really tough. So consistent language, and again, this is about a 6 or 7 page document for us that we just really kind of cover the gambit. Whatever it is, if we make up new words or if they're the oldest words in lacrosse, we have them on this piece of paper for them in the handbook when they get to the University of Michigan on that first day, and as we kind of push through. Do's and don'ts examples. Again, I kind of alluded to it a little bit. What is a good option for me in each area of the field? And I'll kind of let this play in a loop here. This ball is going to transfer through X, all right, come up the wing, and it's going to get to a player at the top of the field here. Now, this player is a left-handed. She's left-handed, and this really kind of breaks down to KYP. KYP is not necessarily just from a coach to player standpoint. KYP fits from player to player. So what you'll see adjacent to this, can you guys see my cursor there? Yeah, good. What you'll see adjacent is everybody's going to KYP. They're going to know that number 7, Chandler Kirby, is a left-hander going, and that is her strength. So you can see here, as this play develops, the adjacent trying to set a pick for her to go to her left hand. Now, Chan decides to go to the right. Now for us, what's the higher percentage play in this situation? Is it to use the pick and go to the left-hand side, or is it to try and split that double team right-handed and take it to the middle of the field? In my opinion, essentially it's a suggestion, but do's and don'ts for us in this area of the field, which would be the top, the higher percentage play is a left-handed drive off that pick. So that's how we establish our do's and don'ts. You'll obviously see here, as we drive, she gets triple team, ball gets put on the ground, ball's going the other way. So very simple. I'll let this play just one more time. We establish these do's and don'ts in the position of the field, and that is just a quick example of where I would say do go to the left, don't go to the right in this situation. And as you can tell, all 6 players on the field are waiting for her to make that decision. Unfortunately, she makes what I would call the lower percentage, not incorrect, but the lower percentage play in this situation. Same exact thing. All right, picking on Channy here a little bit. She's a left-hander. We have a term of, it's called pinballing. All right, we attack the wings and the 45s quite a bit. And what I mean by pinballing is essentially just back and forth across the top of the 8 or in between the 12. And what you'll notice here, as we let this play a little bit, we go across, and the higher percentage play for us would be dodge deep to her right hand there. Instead, she pinballs, goes back towards the middle of the field, as you'll see right here as it replays, back towards the middle of the field, which is a shorter distance to her adjacent defender. She runs in, her now hands are on pressure. She tries to feed that ball in with a lot of pressure on her hands, which obviously leads to a positive situation for the defense and obviously not for the offense. So from a do's and don'ts standpoint, we don't necessarily want you to go to the middle of the field. I would much rather you dodge to the right and keep the rotation of the ball, still pushing across field and then obviously vertically towards X. Okay, so reference points for us. Okay, reference points, GLE field positions, rider, crease or inside. I know there's a little bit of a different terminology throughout the game and that, and then X as well, and I'll kind of break these down. GLE, really simple, goal line extended. I put this first because if I place a lot of importance on GLE as a reference point on the field. Think about how many times in a practice you reference offensively GLE. It may be 4 or 5 or 6. I know for me specifically, especially when you're talking distance away from GLE or beyond GLE or goal line extended outside the 12, all these different times offensively that you reference these spots, you're referencing one key factor, and that is GLE. All right, so for our players to know that position on the field and what it entails, obviously from a conceptual standpoint, is massive. All right, so that's why it's number 1 for us. We define the top as these two, kind of red lines heading vertically towards the end line. Basically, if you had football hash marks on your field, that's right about where we are. We then define the 45s as essentially a straight line extended past the 8-meter elbow, following the 8-meter arm towards the sideline. All right, again, a massive point of emphasis for us there because we do attack that area quite a bit. Definition of wings, okay, very slight, but again, the reason why we define 45s versus the wings is that defenders sometimes, depending on the defense that you're going against, we see a lot of different defenses, obviously in the Big Ten and then out of it. We see zone, we see man, different slide packages, all those types of things. So what we'll do from a game plan perspective is say, okay, guys, we're going to pick on the wings today. We're going to dodge east-west. We're going to go horizontally across the field because this is how the defenders are going to play you in this situation, which adds a sense of confidence and a sense of knowledge to the offensive group to obviously go out there and execute what we're asking them to execute. X, self-explanatory, GLE towards the end line. And then X continued. I break X down into 3 different regions. 1, 2, 3, you could go A, B, C, whatever you may be. The reason why we break this down is more specifically for our players that play behind the net. The reason why we break this down is because, again, defenders are going to play you differently in each one of these zones, whether it's 1, 2, or 3. If I'm a right-hander playing behind the net in zone 1, a defender is going to try and protect goal line extended and from me getting top side. If I then transfer from 1 to 2 as a right-hander, they're going to trail me into that situation because they don't want me to roll back. But then once I push towards 2 and 3, the priority then becomes what? It becomes turning you back at GLE and obviously forcing you back towards what we'd call the parking lot or corners of the field or areas that are essentially you're just not a threat. So that is why we break down X into 3 different situations. It also helps when teaching dodging. When you're teaching an X player how to dodge, those concepts really, really help because now as an offensive player, I understand what the objective is for that defensive player, which I believe you can use against the defender in, a lot of different situations. And next one, Rider. Rider's a big one for us. I'm not exactly sure where it came from. I thought it was an Aussie thing and then went home and guys were like, I have no idea what that means. And then I came over here and people were like, what the hell's Rider? And so it might be unique to us, but we just named it and it's just a line on the field that we use again to reference. North-south splits the field east-west. Really good from a spacing perspective, and I'll kind of add that in as we push through a lot of this film here. The creasing inside, okay? Obviously self-explanatory, but a point on the field that we use a lot. So then pushing into areas of concentration. When we got to the University of Michigan, we had to build IQ. We had to allow those players to understand why they were doing what we were asking them to do. Because if they didn't understand why, there's just a massive disconnect. Why are you telling me to dodge left instead of right? Why are you telling me to, put my hand or stick in this hand versus that hand? So from the IQ perspective, we really, really, really had to build that up, and we're still currently doing it. With obviously new players in and then developing players as we kind of push to those next level of IQs. So the way I kind of build that up, everything starts on ball. I was a defensive assistant at Stevenson University, and what I learned about defense was everything starts on ball. You play bad 1v1 defense, forget about what you're teaching and the rest of it, it ain't going to work. So I really took that approach and applied that to offense. What can I do in each area of the field, whether I'm a midfielder or an attacker, and then bumped into adjacents. By definition, one away from the ball. What can I do and how can I react based off KYP, do's and don'ts, all those types of concepts? How can I make sure I'm in the best place to be effective and do it in a timely manner that allows an offense to progress and push in the right direction? And then off ball. I define off ball by essentially 2 away from the ball. Whether it's at X, inside, you could be away or off ball, all those types of different things. But again, this is where we'll kind of break it down and push through. Areas of concentration, defensive knowledge. I kind of touched on this really, really quickly. It is so important for offensive players to understand how defense works. We spend a lot of time educating attackers and midfielders on how they're going to be played, whether it's from a game plan perspective or just simple 1s and 2s when it comes to defense. They're going to play left foot or right foot heavy, trying to send you down the alley or towards the middle. What are they going to try and do when you get to 5 and 5 or the island or the spot, as Kayla kind of referenced in her talk earlier today? All these types of pieces and that knowledge applies to an offensive player, again, building that base IQ, which then leads to the concepts that you're then asking them to do or execute, from an entire concept and offensive standpoint there too. Defensive priorities, like I mentioned, on-ball, adjacent slide packages, again, pushing towards that IQ standpoint. And then this pairs mentality. Our offense is really kind of based off pairs. Two people, two people, two people, and then one person, whether it's at X or inside, and we've got some film to kind of back that up as well. So where do I start? On-ball, okay? So this is kind of down to the nitty-gritty of it here. Concept one is dodging lines. I've got a slide to show you that, all right? A dodging line, essentially for us, is something that we created to allow players a reference point on the field, especially while watching film, in order to make decisions. You should make a decision by the time you hit this position on the field. I'll expand on that in a little bit. Widening out. Widening out is essentially a movement by an offensive player to achieve three different things. Whether it is create space between adjacent defenders, allow an offensive player to identify how a defender is going to play you, and then three, make sure the defender never gets their feet settled at certain points in times. And then the third one, defensive knowledge. How am I going to be played again? Really making sure we hammer that in all points. Now, dodging lines. Now, I want to try and explain this as best I possibly can, and if you have questions about this, please feel free to kind of put your hand up or come find me afterwards. But you'll notice the top horizontal line to the right-hand side has X, all right? So if I'm a player or an offensive player progressing through GLE from end line to 30, I need to make a decision essentially by the time I hit that dodging line, whether it's go to the cage, move the ball, step back and feed. You can then see that lower horizontal line, that is from the top. So if I'm dodging from those field reference positions, I need to again make my decision by that area of the field. Now this isn't exact, like I'm not like, you had 1 foot over that line, you've got to make a decision, you know what I mean? These are just areas for us to kind of really push through and again use as teaching tools. And then from a wing perspective, same thing. As I cross that line, whether it's going from right or left, I've got to see and I've got to make a decision and allow my offensive players around me to see and predict, I guess is a good word, and allow them to then put themselves in a position, whether it's fading, cutting, whatever it may be, and I'll kind of touch on that. So an example of decision making. What you'll see here is the ball go down to the wing position. Player clearly makes the decision to go to the rack. This is, again, straight line is going towards our KYP. This is one of our local products. She's a Michigan product, Maggie Kane. She makes that decision. If you can picture that last slide, that left-handed wing dodging line, she makes that decision. By the time she hits that thing, she's going full speed, shoulder down, going to the cage. If she hadn't have made that decision, if she hesitated, indecision kills, hesitation kills. If you hesitate, forget about it. All right? I would much rather you go full ball right into the adjacent defender and lose a ball rather than hesitate and not achieve and take that chance. But you'll notice in this situation, this adjacent defender that I'm circling here, if she had have hesitated and ended up 3 or 4 steps, she's not taking that shot. It's going to be a dangerous shot, or she's going to step away and try to move that ball. So that's an example of dodging lines for us from a wing perspective. Same exact thing, not from a scoring perspective, now from a passing perspective. 41 attacking the 45. Again, that wing line, she steps up vertically, moves that ball, makes the decision, and allows the play to develop in front of her. As we kind of watch this, you'll notice she gets to that first, second hash type area and goes vertically up the field, allowing that pass to be an ample distance. We want to try and avoid those 3-4 yard little touch passes for us. Again, because our stick work at that point in time probably wasn't the best that it needed to be. So from a dodging line perspective, she made the decision. It then bumps across. We get a good play on the backside. Obviously, we're shooting space against a backer-type zone defense that we saw in this game specifically. Ooh, there we go. So now an example of not making that decision or hesitating. Number 9, Maggie Kane, you see on the far side of the field, does not make that decision. She clearly hesitates and cuffs one in the chops. For me personally, this is on the offense. This isn't on the defense. This was called a foul for us. However, this point for us from a teaching perspective is, Maggie, you didn't make a decision. What were you supposed to do? Either go underneath, all right, or pass the ball. And if you watch the adjacent players in white, they're waiting for her to make a decision. She just never makes it. Okay, so one, you can protect yourself and really make sure you're not cupping some bruises with dodging lines, but it also allows you to move the ball when you need to move it. Same exact thing. All right, now we're coming from X. All right, Lily Grass. She is a senior for us now. This one's pretty self-explanatory. Right through the middle. This was, a Lily Grass special, we actually started to call it, because it happened quite a few times these couple of years. But again, notice the rest of the group. The rest of the group is sitting back going, whoa, hold on a second. This ain't part of what we do. You've just crossed this line and you haven't made a decision. Now that's obviously reading body language, right? Am I turning the corner to go to the cage, or are my eyes up, passing the ball? But this is essentially when it all breaks down. And you obviously see, like I mentioned, the Lily Grass special. Leaning on to the point about widening out. Now, widening out was a situation that we developed, or a concept. I don't think it's new, but I certainly think we put some point of emphasis on it based off what we were finding defenses, or where defenses were forcing us. If we were dodging from the top, basically in between second and center hash, a lot of defenses were just sitting on the outside and forcing us to the middle. We're raw, physical, straight line people. We want to get to the alleys. We were just running in across checks the entire time. So the idea was that we widened out, and again, definition of widening out accomplished three different things. Create distance between adjacent defenders, allow the ball carrier to identify how that defensive player is playing that individual, and then not to allow the defender to set her feet. So as we play this, ball goes through X, you'll see 41 on the camera side here, horizontal motion across the field. So if we go back in this clip a little bit, and if I pause it when she catches the ball, Adriana Pendino, strong right-hand player, pretty much no left. All right, so we had to try and figure out situations or ideas for her to be able to get back to her right hand. If she goes right hand here, or to her right hand, she's running into traffic. All right, so by definition, she widens out. And you can now see, if you break down just the adjacent defenders and adjacent offensive players, she's now got almost equal distance between the two. She's created space, she's lengthened those slides simply by taking 3 or 4 side shuffles to her left, by definition what we termed widening out. Now, widening out can be done in multiple areas of the field, but this is a great example. Now, for her, she's a strong right-hander, so for her, she dodges left, and now you see the distance that she's created even more so between that adjacent defender to what will be your right, and obviously the ball carrier. Now, she doesn't achieve what she wants in this situation. She doesn't get back to the top side, but it's good fundamental play. She didn't take the chance going to the middle of the field. She didn't try and force something. She stuck to what she knows. She stuck to defensive knowledge. And if you can see here, the defender pretty much plays her square up a little bit down, forcing her behind, but she makes a half-decent play rather than running directly right-handed into that pressure. Now there you fight kind of that catch-and-go mentality, right? Yes, it's good to attack hard and attack fast. However, if the adjacents offensively aren't ready for you to go, it makes it tough. Spacing, especially with 7 individuals on the field plus 7 defenders, makes it pretty hard based off the range that we're shooting as well. Defensive adjustment. Oh, my bad. So now, second point. It allows you to identify and sometimes change the way a defender is going to play you. Now, if you watch, in this situation, I think you guys should be able to see this. This on-ball defender has her stick in her left hand. And she's playing somewhat left foot heavy. Right? This specific defender, based off film that we've watched, she will put her stick head in the upfield hand and try to send you away from that stick. So in this situation, right in this instance, she's trying to send our offensive player back towards the middle of the field in between that second and second and center hash. 2 steps by our offensive midfielder. 2 steps, that's all it takes. 2 steps, that defender has now moved her stick to the opposite side, and you can clearly see as we let this play here that she now flips her hips to try and force our offensive player down the alley. Now, we're straight liners. We want to get to the alley, so this is why we had to develop concepts like this, allowing our players to get to their strength. Now, in this one, she hangs out the washing. Obviously, a pretty good back check by the defender here, but the on-ball concept is really, really sound. Lastly, not allowing the defender's feet to settle. All right, this is obviously a designated go, but just these 2 steps. All right, you'll watch, it's a pretty nice take by number 1, Caitlin Mueller on our team. These 2 steps towards, or 2 side shuffles, allow us to, again, get our left foot higher because she's a left-hander trying to get to the middle of the field, so that's obviously a good thing. And if you watch the defender's feet, they never stop moving. At not one point does she break down, sink the hips, and really set her feet. It's because, I believe, that our offensive player is moving continuously in multiple directions. Our offensive player isn't necessarily just moving left or right. She's side shuffling and running at the defender at the same time, which messes up the timing in regards to contact and footwork and those types of things as well. So that's kind of the third portion of our widening out concepts. Any questions there? Oh, cool. Then adjacents. Okay, so obviously we just kind of broke through a couple of concepts that we work from an on-ball perspective. Now we got to go to the ball that are next to them. All right, basic rules for us: clear through, pop, cuts, create space. Again, nothing brand new here. Again, just established concepts for us, and just ways of doing things that we allowed our players to do. And then one that we kind of really use is front of the jersey fade, back of the jersey follow. What I mean by that, if I see a player and the front of her jersey, I can see that name across the front of her chest. All right, if I can see that, she's coming towards me. So I have a couple of options there, whether it's cut through or fade. Now, fade is essentially a back pedal, whether it's vertically or horizontally or diagonally across the field. And I'll kind of show you what I mean by that. And then the back of the jersey, if I then see the back of the jersey or the numbers of my adjacent offensive player and or the ball carrier, I then have to allow myself to get to a position because off any dodge, we need an outlet forward and we need an outlet back. So if I don't follow that situation and she heads too far away from me and gets double teamed and tries to roll away and I haven't followed, I'm in the blame. It's not on the ball carrier now. She's done her job. She's gained 2. It's now on me as an adjacent to make sure we get there. Some quick examples of this. All right, I'll kind of just let this one play through and talk about it. Obviously on ball, and what I want you to really kind of take notice of is the pairs mentality on the backside. I'll let that play once through. I'll pause it here. Okay, these 2 in particular. All right, so a good off-ball exchange just goes into our pairs mentality. You've got 2 at X, 1 inside. You've got the ball carrier. You've got the clear-through space adjacently to get to a strength, whether it's underneath or over the top. And now we're working on this backside. Now for us, a pop is essentially a vertical motion, side shuffle, run, whatever you want to do, upfield or downfield. In this situation, the pop is upfield. Pop, sit down on the 12. Right here is the one that I'm talking about. Now, 2 reasons why we want to do pops from an adjacent perspective. If she had stayed exactly where she was, essentially top of the soccer box right there, that white line, we don't have a passing lane. Simple. We cannot get that ball from one side of the field to the other or cross rider. So the pop is really now an important position for us on the backside. The ball then transfers, and what I really like about this video clip is that you'll watch. This is where KYP stands, all right? And understanding what we want to achieve. We've got a good downhill dodger right here, one of our best. She scored, I think she was a leading goal scorer for us last year. She was a graduated senior. I'm probably going to let her go to the rack. So the clear through, again, the ball has moved straight through, allowing us space to move and get a half-decent shot off. So I'll let that play just one more time so you can kind of watch it full. Clearing space with 23 right here. Think about our dodging line concept. Makes the decision, moves the ball, clear through, drive, roll back. Half-decent shot. Probably not the best one we want to take. You got to take chances when you're playing Northwestern, I can tell you that much. So, again, concepts adjacent to the ball. Now, fade. Fading is, again, that concept that we talked about. A back pedal away from the ball. I'll let this one play. If you watch our player at X here, she fades across right. Kayla Trainer in her talk before alluded to situations like this. Based off defensive knowledge, I know that these low defenders can't slide up. All right, defensive knowledge and all the rules of our game, she slides up, that's going to be shooting space every single time. So the fade at X gives you a passing lane. What I mean by that, that passing lane, if you can see my cursor right here, is essentially between the near side pipe and that adjacent defender. And that's actually something that we really try and exploit. We know teams are going to try to slide to us because we've got some half-decent dodges, and it creates that passing lane. You've now got an offensive player pushing towards the opposite side of the field. Now this is where Rido comes in. Rido, that vertical line that we use, our direction as you fade, you either split Rido with your feet or you completely cross Rido. If we don't do that, we've created a longer distance for me to get back to GLE on the opposite side of the field. So that's where a point of reference Rido kind of comes in and plays, just to kind of tie it all together there. We now create a pretty good offensive position here, and we finish. All right, going back to our pairs mentality, if you look at one on the backside arm of the 8-meter, we have a term which we call mirror between our two X players. And they essentially mirror each other as they push across. I'll let this play one more time. We fade at X. You can see those two mirroring here. Good flash towards the ball from the inside. Takes the pressure away. Good three-man or kind of ball movement based off offensive and adjacent concepts. Where do I start from then on? I then push to off ball. Okay, so defined by me, 2 away from the ball, essentially. How am I doing? What time do we start? 2:15? Yeah, I'm kind of getting on a roll here. Then off ball. So 3 keys that we kind of work on in regards to our off ball. Gap mentality, second layer, and then our parking lot mentality. The parking lot mentality stems from a guy I played for in college. A lot of people know him, a guy named Dave Cottle. He used to tell him, if you weren't dangerous, you may as well be playing lacrosse in the parking lot. AKA, you're not a threat. So the parking lot mentality for us is really important. Right? We want to make sure we're a threat at every single point while we have the ball on offense. If we're not doing our job offensively. Because the nuances and the differences between being a threat and not, the differences between scoring goals and not scoring goals. If I take one defender out of that situation, I then allow the ball carriers and then adjacents to do their job. So if I'm 2 away from the ball and I don't have that parking lot mentality, I'm letting the ball carrier and the adjacents down, and I'm not allowing them to achieve what they're trying to achieve or allowing them to do their job. The second layer, another concept that Kayla touched on in her talk, I really enjoyed that one, was essentially a lot of feeds into the middle of the field will happen to the first cut. 9 times out of 10, it's not the first cut, it's going to be open. All right? We have a saying, create space. All right? So the ability to see the second layer and see through your defenders is a really good concept for us that I'll obviously kind of hop on with some film as well. And then the gap mentality. See it, push it. Whether that's off ball, adjacent, or on ball. If you see gaps in defenders and you don't push that gap, whether it's a fade, whether it's a cut, whether it's all those types of things, you're not doing your job. This is a new concept for us that really kind of pushed in as we struggled with zones. We just didn't have the necessary kind of background information to be able to go against zones. And so we had to try and figure out some concepts to allow our players to be successful, allow them to essentially not freak out when somebody played a zone against us, because that's what they would essentially do. So we came up with a gap mentality, see it, push it, and obviously from an off-ball standpoint, that's going to be majorly cutting. So the gap mentality. Ball progresses too, and again, I'll just kind of let this one play here, but the ball, what I want you to pay attention to is this player on the backside of the field. We're driving from the wing, and the 45 situation, I believe we end up going pretty much directly from the wing. This is against a zone, ball goes across, and if you can pay attention to that backside player, she sees the gap, she pushes it, and pushes towards the middle of the field. Now, pretty physical situation there that ended up happening, but what we want and what I'm more concerned with is this player identifying the gap she has in front of her. So we can all see that between the 2 away from the ball defender, so essentially if I kind of circle it, this one right here, and then the defender's inside. Again, if I'm in the parking lot or I'm on the 12 in this situation, I've lost any advantage. Because by the time I get this ball from the ball carrier to that backside, defensively, it's enough time to rotate and recover back to the ball. She pinches, is a term we use, pinching towards the 8. She doesn't cut too early. She doesn't cut too early. I was saying, don't be a bee to honey. Don't be a bee to honey. If you're a bee to honey in this situation, you run straight to the middle of the field because you see an opening and you essentially cover yourself. What I mean by that is you just run and stand right next to a defender. In this one, she's patient, and this is why I really, really love this clip. She's patient, she slows herself down, she pushes to the middle of the field, and again, takes some contact. Like I said, I mentioned at the very start of this, we got some kids who don't necessarily mind the contact. Okay, now this is a little bit more of an on-ball gap mentality, right? Just to kind of explain this. Against a little bit more of a man-to-man concept here, all right? But just some really good on-ball concentration. Now, talked about a little bit of a saying that we use, see past your defender, especially in a pick situation. Really, the major importance, or not say major importance, but a good majority of what you're looking at, in my perspective, going into a pick situation isn't necessarily the two defenders that are playing you right on the pick situation. It's who's coming from the backside. Because people are going to slide quickly, all right? People are going to slide quickly. So in this situation, think about our dodging lines too, Maggie Kane makes that decision, sees the gap, goes right through it. And there's no hesitation, absolutely no hesitation, which tells me as her coach, she's identified that gap. She's seeing through her defenders, and she's not making the decision once she comes off the pick. She's made that decision by the time she catches the ball. That's when I know as an offensive coach, she's learning the concepts. She's understanding what's going on from a two-man situation. And again, it's very self-explanatory in this one, the gap that they achieve between the on-ball defenders and the adjacent defenders, which couldn't be more, obviously obvious in this situation. Okay, now going to this second layer concept. The second layer concept for us really, really hit home when trying to get the ball to the backside. Whether we were dodging horizontally across the field from the wings and the 45s, seeing a hard slide across the top and moving the ball to the backside, that's when the second layer mentality really, really kind of took fruition for us. What you'll notice here is two really hard cuts. One from the wing, one from the top. All right, again, gap mentality that we just talked about. 7 sees a gap, even though it's a bit of a small one, she sees that right in front of her and she pushes it. The adjacent offensive player is going through her KYP progression. Okay, this is Caitlin Muir. She's one of our best dodgers. She's a left-hander. I should probably get the hell out of the way. So she goes through that progression, and you'll see the first layer develop. And what I mean by first layer, I essentially mean these two defenders, this defender here, and our two offensive players. As she cuts, creates space, our offensive player doesn't feed it to the first layer because she's allowing the play to develop. She sees Caitlin lead on the backside. She now steps into that second layer and finishes a pretty nice shot here going down the alley. So again, this is an established concept for us to understand that if you drive and you see this type of action in front of you as a ball carrier, 9 times out of 10, unless it's a wide open look inside, you're going to be looking over the top. Again, going towards the concept of seeing past your defender and pushing towards the second layer here. Another example, all right, this one's a little bit more nuanced. All right, on-ball pick situation. All right, good communication, going back to our pairs mentality. Inside, you've seen the ball side clear through in this situation. Again, seeing Caitlin Muir come to her left-hand side, that's a pretty strict instruction for us. You can see this adjacent or eventually adjacent midfielder cut through space. She cuts through. Now, what I really, really like about this situation is a play of 21 inside. 21 flashes towards the ball, what I would call a flash. 2, 3 hard steps in the direction of the ball. What that allows, 9 times out of 10, is a lot of defensive respect. A lot of defensive respect. And you'll actually notice here how many players take notice of 21 flashing towards the ball, which then opens up the second layer, which is 9 Maggie Kane on the backside. So by definition for us, first layer would be 21. Second layer is the backside Maggie Kane. So again, an established concept and just two different looks. I mean, by the same player, one's more vertical, one's more horizontal, but created through good hard cuts and cutting with purpose. Again, going towards cuts create space. Okay, and now kind of pushing it all together. So gap mentality and the second land mentality. Okay, again, going through our offensive progression and allowing these plays to develop, all really defined, again, by a good hard flash by 21 on the inside. Right, Nadine Stewart, she's a Canadian out of BC for us, really established herself as a pretty good inside player for us last year. And we wanted to get the ball to her. However, we understood that if we can't get the ball to her, people are going to take notice, which allows us to open up the backside. And then you'll see Erin Daly here on the backside, see her gap, pushes her gap. And then from an on-ball perspective, from a feeding viewpoint, we allow the defense to crash. This defender takes a step towards ball side, which opens this gap up for us to cut into on the backside. Play that one more time. Okay, so just getting towards pretty much the end here. Just putting it all together and breaking down some good, solid film positions here. From an IQ standpoint, spacing, and this is where the whole spacing thing comes into play, you'll see very established pairs in this clip. On ball, off ball, this is our single look. It's one of our different looks. One person at X, not two, but we now have two people inside. So the pairs mentality operates from on ball, off ball, inside with a single at X. All right, we'll break down on ball first. Two players communicating. Footage gets a little grainy here, but we should be able to go. All right, good communication between the two on-ball players, understanding what we want to achieve. And as you can see here, you'll notice the backside pair getting into position as the ball side pair or the ball carriers now start to develop what they've communicated through. It's a bit of a pick situation and a slip. A little bit of a look at the ball. Now this is skill development. Molly Garrett, she's going to be playing this weekend. We're super proud of her. She looks at the slip. She looks at the slip. All right, by what I mean by that, if I just rewind it a little bit. As she comes off this pick situation, you'll notice her almost pump fake back towards Maggie right there. You'll notice that this adjacent defender slides because of that. Okay, so now on ball has created opportunity. So what have we got on the backside now automatically? We got a 2v1. Great situation for us. Okay, we watched a clip against Northwestern where we moved the ball across the top, we cut through, and we drove. Okay, but now from a defensive knowledge standpoint, Caitlin Muir and Chandler Kirby on the backside have identified what they have. Best situation in lacrosse, offensively at least, a 2v1. Okay, so instead of cutting through here, Caitlin Muir fades. One more, we then finish on the backside. So a lot of different work as we then push into the inside. Right, the pairs mentality, as we kind of reset this clip here, you'll notice the inside, reacting to the ball. Not standing still, and at times a little too close together for my liking, allowing one defender to cover two. However, they've got good spacing in this situation. They react to the ball, slightly creates distance between the slides, and we achieve what we want to achieve. So what I love about this clip is it's all these pairs acting independently of each other. However, everybody's on the same page. They know what they have to achieve on the backside. The ball carriers understand what they have from a look perspective. The inside knows what we're trying to achieve. And essentially at X here, we're just reacting to the ball. Okay, a couple longer clips here as we just kind of push through, and I'll just essentially mention the concepts that we've talked about. This is a do's and don'ts situation. However, right, what I mean by do's and don'ts is a suggestion. It's not a brand new law that we absolutely have to abide by when playing offense at the University of Michigan. You can still take chances, absolutely. I want you to take chances, do them going 100%. In this situation, she's got space to her right. She's got a gap. This is Caitlin Mead. She's a strong right-handed player, takes that middle of the field. That's completely fine by me, right? Doesn't necessarily match to the do's and don'ts that I mentioned, a little bit at the start of the clip, but then we play from there. Good little pick situation, okay, allowing the ball to progress, moving the ball to the backside, not necessarily playing fast, but playing composed. One of the biggest things that we kind of fought, we ended up giving this goal, even though she walked straight through the crease. But take what you can get. That's my motto. But again, composure was a big part of what we had to really establish. Composure came from knowledge and understanding what each other were going to do. So everybody kind of talks about being composed in offense, but how do you achieve that? You achieve composure by information. Right? It's exactly like studying for a test or whatever it may be. If I'm giving you the information for that test, you're not going to go into that test, nervous about the result because you know the information. Again, defensive knowledge. Know yourself, know your opponent. Don't even sweat the outcome, because if you know those two portions, you're going to be successful as you kind of push through. So again, just an overall possession there as we go through. One last one. All right, again, a little bit of a longer one here. And you can see we're quite deliberate. For us as an offense progressing, especially in our second year here at the University of Michigan, the defense is what carried us. I'll completely admit that. Right? Anna did an incredible job with our defense, allowing them to give us the ball back multiple opportunities. This game was a tough one. The Denver defense was probably one of the toughest ones that we went against. We got lucky the first one. They got us on the second one. They adjusted. We certainly didn't in that one. All right, but in this situation, again, achieve a shooting space on the backside. All right, we end up missing the shooting space. We play fast off the end line. All right, pick a ball up out of the snow, play from there. All right, clear through ball side. We go against the grain here a little bit. So from a do's and don'ts standpoint, probably not where we want to go. All right, you can tell the people on the field are reacting to her. However, we get the ball to X. Just play that quickly. Get the ball to X. Inside position has been solidly established by 21. Get a good finish on the inside. So again, just a lot of different concepts, kind of tying everything that I've spoken about, into 2 or 3 little possessions as we push on there. That's it. So we've got about 5 minutes here. If people had questions, please feel free. Any concepts, anything that didn't make sense, please put your hand up. Anybody? Easy. All right. Well, look, I am obviously going to be around for these next few days. I enjoy talking about this. I love talking about this. These are my details, my cell phone number, and my email. If you want the presentation, I don't mind sending it to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to come up at the end here. But thank you again for coming. Hope you learned something.